Trial of Guillaume Soro's Aide-De-Camp on March 24, 2025, a sham trial to exclude him from the presidential race. The trial of Commander Abdoulaye Fofana, former aide-de-camp to Guillaume Soro, is scheduled for March 24, 2025, before the Abidjan Criminal Court. The Ivorian regime seeks to prosecute him, and some of his former military comrades for conspiracy against state authority, forming armed groups, participating in an armed group, disturbing public order, and other similar charges. Commander Abdoulaye Fofana was arrested in 2022 in Côte d'Ivoire, after leaving exile to discreetly visit his family, particularly his elderly and ailing father, whom he wished to see in his final moments. He was arrested on May 3, 2022, following the betrayal of some of his former brothers-in-arms, whom he had carelessly contacted to send a fraternal greeting. Following his arrest, he was, of course, tortured for months at the DST before being transferred to a secret detention facility. The goal was clear: force him to confess that he had returned to Côte d'Ivoire to orchestrate a coup on behalf of his former boss, Guillaume Soro. His former comrades in the Republican Guard, guilty of failing to inform the authorities that Commander Fofana had simply called them to say hello, were also considered suspects, perhaps even accomplices, and were detained alongside him. Some civilians who sheltered him or transported him in their vehicles, so he could see his dying father one last time, were also arrested, and will stand trial for the same alleged crime of threatening state authority. This is the judicial masquerade set to unfold in Abidjan on March 24. And my aide-de-camp, he's just been dismissed from the army. Fofana, am I lying about you? He's just been dismissed from the army. He himself didn't know. I called him, and I said, Fofana, you've just been dismissed. Didn't you receive the paper? He replied, no. So I told him, I'll send you the paper, and I sent it to him. He said, but boss, how can they dismiss me? I'm doing my job. I'm your aide-de-camp. Well, what I don't understand is that when Ouattara was in the opposition, and I was prime minister, he was given 20 gendarmes for his security. 20 gendarmes. And what's more, I had put another system in place to protect him. You see, right? Me, in my turn, a simple aide-de-camp, he is struck off the army. Honestly, I don't know what it's about anymore. Is Fofana a Beatty? Fofana, are you a Beatty? Is your father a Beatty? Is your mother a Beatty? He is Koyaka. Afterwards, we will say that it is the Beatty who are against us. Was it a Beatty who dismissed you? So in Bagbo's time, did you not work well with me? Did Bagbo dismiss you? But, if I say that it was Alassane who dismissed him, struck him off, you will say that Guillaume is exaggerating. He did, however, strike him off. Here is someone who, in the fight for Alassane to be president, was shot at point blank. He has a bullet in his foot right now, this Fofana Abdoulaye. If he were dead today, what was I going to do? And it wasn't even Bagbo who dismissed him, it was the one he was shot for who dismissed him. Well, Fofana, it's your own fault. Go tell your parents. Call your parents to tell them that as many Bagbos as you were useful to me. But in Alassane's time, you were dismissed. The paperwork is there. Afterwards, others will say that I betrayed Alassane.
That's what we hear outside.
Exactly, that's good, that's good. Afterwards, we'll say that we betrayed Alassane. We betrayed him how? So we just have to follow Alassane even though we see him heading for a brick wall, and we must follow him. Afterwards, the population will rise up and come and hit us all. I can't let myself be beaten stupidly like that, so I really withdrew. Far from being an impartial procedure, this sham trial is part of a broader strategy of repression and silencing the opposition. The charges against him and his co-defendants are based on grotesque, fabricated accusations concocted by a justice system under orders. The objective is clear. String together convictions and intimidation tactics to deter any support for Guillaume Soro and, above all, prevent his triumphant return to the Ivorian political scene. For instance, Commander Fofana is accused of having ridden in a car with a friend whose father is a marabout in Tayasali. He is also being accused because his partner transferred money to someone who had contacted him during his exile with a financial problem. At the time of his arrest, he was in a civilian's car after returning from Abidjan, where they had gone to eat fish. Commander Abdoulaye Fofana's arrest is seen as a golden opportunity for Alassane Ouattara and his clique. With the 2025 presidential election looming, they are rushing to stage the trial of a man who has been in their hands since 2022, with the investigation concluded in just a few months. The real goal? To turn this trial into another trial, that of Guillaume Soro. If his former aide-de-camp was arrested, Abidjan believes they hold a key figure who knows all the secrets of the former prime minister and ex-president of the National Assembly. His men, his network, his alliances, his emissaries, his war chest, his hideouts, and more. Commander Abdoulaye Fofana is expected to know everything and, most importantly, to spill it all. But alas! A thorough examination of the case reveals glaring inconsistencies. There is no tangible evidence to support the charges of conspiracy against the state, or forming armed groups against Commander Fofana. Even less so is there any connection to Guillaume Soro. Through his judicial contacts, Chris Yapi has obtained access to the entire case file. And it is laughable. The case is completely empty and built on nothing. First, once Mr. Soro left the presidency of the National Assembly, Commander Fofana no longer held the position of aide-de-camp and had no professional or institutional ties to him. Thus, Fofana was no longer under Mr. Soro's authority or responsibility. According to testimonies from Guillaume Soro's close associates, he was surprised to learn about Abdoulaye Fofana's arrest in Côte d'Ivoire. He had believed that Fofana was still in exile, most likely in Switzerland with his family, after a stay in France and Belgium. He was unaware that Fofana had decided to clandestinely return to Côte d'Ivoire to visit his father, who, incidentally, passed away a few months after his son's arrest. The investigation conducted by the National Gendarmerie's research section did not implicate Mr. Soro at any point. Instead, their findings indicate that the alleged destabilization plot, for which Commander Fofana is being accused, was conceived and organized by Fofana himself and people close to him or who were at some point in time, former military friends, a marabout, etc. Furthermore, in their statements given to both the gendarmes and the investigating judge, all co-defendants categorically denied any connection to Guillaume Soro, any instructions from him, financial aid, or encouragement of any kind. They know him, as do all Ivorians, but have never interacted with him. At no point did Commander Fofana address them while claiming to speak on behalf of Guillaume Soro. He spoke to them as a friend, a brother, or a former comrade in arms. None of them mentioned receiving instructions or directives from Mr. Soro. This situation is akin to a former colleague of yours, once close, who later works elsewhere and encounters legal trouble. Should you be held accountable for the actions or issues caused by this former colleague? Logically, any involvement of Mr. Soro would require at least some form of contact, logistical or financial support, none of which exist in this case. Furthermore, the termination of their public and institutional collaboration, combined with the absence of any recent exchanges, completely discredits any notion of complicity. But this is Côte d'Ivoire. The methods used here are eerily reminiscent of autocratic regimes, where merely knowing someone, having family ties, or past political affiliations is enough to be condemned. The ruling power, unable to produce credible material evidence, relies on a crude narrative, padded with implausible accusations involving marabouts and mystical practices, as if a modern justice system could be built on such absurdities. The judicial harassment of Guillaume Soro's associates is not an isolated incident. Since his forced exile, every attempt to reconnect with the Ivorian political landscape has been met with waves of repression. His supporters are hunted down, arrested, and convicted based on empty cases. This trial serves only to prolong this systematic persecution. The ultimate goal is clear. To turn Guillaume Soro into a political pariah, strip him of all national and international standing, and ultimately bar him from running for the presidency. The targeted crackdown on his associates shows that the regime is not merely excluding him from politics, it is actively working to erase all traces of his influence using undemocratic methods. Democracy contributes to peace. A lack of democracy, such as the exclusion of candidates or voters, can also contribute to unnecessary disruption. This trial also exposes the decay of Côte d'Ivoire's judicial system, which has become nothing more than a rubber stamp for the regime's directives. Every political trial follows the same script. Vague accusations, biased investigations conducted with a presumption of guilt, no guarantees for the defendants, and, ultimately, swift convictions. This sham trial is nothing more than a political purge disguised as justice. It aims to silence, eliminate, and remove any dissenting voices. The regime wants to send a clear message. Any attempt at opposition will be crushed without mercy, and anyone who dares to challenge the power structure will suffer the same fate. This trial is even more absurd given that Côte d'Ivoire's current socio-political climate demands openness and reconciliation rather than repression and exclusion. Instead of fostering a democratic environment where ideas prevail over judicial coercion, the regime is methodically hunting down those it perceives as threats. However, ruling through fear and judicial manipulation only accelerates its own downfall. In seeking to destroy Guillaume Soro and his circle, the regime is unwittingly forging symbols of resistance. History has shown time and again that no regime has ever endured by using the justice system as a weapon against its opponents. Every unjust conviction, every rigged trial, only strengthens the people's resolve, and sets the stage for an inevitable shift in power. Modern democracies are not built on repression and fear but on principles of impartial justice and fairness. Yet, in Côte d'Ivoire, the judiciary has become nothing more than a tool of persecution. Judges, who should be the guardians of the rule of law, are now mere enforcers of a dying regime that cannot tolerate the slightest dissent. This judicial drift signals the failure of a government that, lacking a solid political vision and a credible national project, resorts to sham trials to cling to power. History will judge these actions harshly, and those orchestrating them will one day have to answer for their deeds. March 24, 2025, will not just be another political trial. It will be yet another reminder that Côte d'Ivoire is now ruled by fear and repression. But every injustice breeds resistance, and every abuse of power brings its perpetrators closer to their downfall. History is in motion, and it never forgives those who believe they can endlessly crush a people. Chris Yapi does not lie. Find Chris Yapi on his 2 YouTube channels, his Rumble channel, his TikTok, X, Instagram, VK and Threads accounts.